right. Morning.
Morning.
Hi. Hi. Can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, good.
At some point during the study, I'm gonna have to take a phone call. I am gonna have to drop off, but I'll be back. It won't be long.
Okay.
Here. Um, I can't hear you, Dorothy. Um,
Like Dorothy is muted.
Yeah, as long as I have noise in the background, I'm going to mute myself.
Good idea.
Okay. Can't see anybody on your end.
You can't see. This is Jerry Ann. Can you see me?
I
Yeah.
can see Jerry Ann and Carol, but I
Yeah, I
can't
can
see.
see you and Carol. Yep. This is Stephanie.
I see. Now, maybe just let me explode my screen a bit. Now I can see
Waiting
Carol.
for Susan to sign on.
Where's Father Paul?
He's at a clergy conference at the cathedral.
Oh,
A 3-day conference, so this is the last day.
This is totally my fault because I totally don't remember how to turn the volume up.
Oh, there we go.
perfect timing. I just finished my oatmeal.
Oh, good.
Just
Hi, can anybody hear me?
This
Yes.
is Jerry Ann. I can hear you.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm not here.
You could put your volume up a hair.
Stephanie's not on video,
Well, you
right?
don't see me, but I'm the host.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep.
Okay, am I unmuted, guys?
I
Can
see
you
you,
hear me?
I hear you.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to make your volume any louder.
Because it says I'm not muted.
I can make it louder on for me, but that doesn't necessarily.
I could hear Susan just fine, so.
Okay, that's
Um,
good.
I
But it
completely
may be just the
understand.
difference in the equipment, the tools.
Yeah, I'm
She's
good.
okay.
Oh,
So you've got 4 of us on here as far as I can tell.
okay, can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear
Yeah.
you and see you.
Yeah.
Yay! We're gonna take 2 or 3 minutes to wait for one of our members to return to the space. And then we'll be going straight ahead.
Right.
I think most everybody knows that Father Paul is at clergy conference and that Susan is going to be mediating the whatever this is. Bible study, yeah. I had a half meeting with the garden club.
Mm,
I'm kind of a little bit out of sync on who I am, where I am, what I'm.
I know. Well, we were supposed to have a brunch today, and the amount of people keeps declining. So I got a call the other day. They decided not to do brunch, that whoever showed up would go out to lunch. I was invited too, but being I'm sick and I'm home, I said thank you, but I'm not going anywhere. So I just got a call. One of the ladies stopped at church and was talking to Bill. So we got everything all squared away there.
Hi, Stephanie.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, better to ask how you're doing.
Well, better. I have never been this sick in my life, other than when I had double pneumonia when I was 25, but no energy. I had no lung power for a while. They tell me I don't have bronchitis. I don't have pneumonia. I supposedly have a cold, but I don't know. It's the weirdest cold. I'm finally, after 3 weeks, I can actually functionally walk around and breathe. So I don't know. I took all the medicines they told me to take, all the inhalers and all the cough syrup. I didn't find any of that useful. Prednisone was the only thing that did anything. And I'm finished with that now. So I am going to a pulmonologist on Friday to find out why I don't have lung power, but that's another story.
Okay.
Well, feel better quick because we
No,
all
thank
miss
you. I appreciate that.
Yes,
We
we
miss you.
miss you, and we especially
Hmm.
miss your many skills and abilities.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah, we might as well call it by its proper name. We do miss you.
Oh, well, thank you. But I haven't been non-existent. I've been on all the Sundays on hosting this, and I helped Bill organize the bowling from this end so that we had the
Yes.
bowl-a-thon on Sunday, and I did the announcements. I mean, I've still done whatever I could.
He
Oh,
did,
yes.
he did a great job. It was a
Yeah.
lot of fun.
We would have had it back in.
Yeah, it was a great event.
They like
But because it
they
was on
like the
warranty,
bowling.
We had a
Yes,
great
it was a big hit. It was a terrible weather day, but we had a lot of people. A lot of people had a lot of fun, and I'd opened the door. We have our collegiate tournament in January, and you'll be seeing information soon because we've created open bowling, and we've also created King of the Hill at the end of the month, so that there's something for everybody if they're interested, all ages, everything. And so I'm very proud of Bill's done a super job. We do have a committee. 3 people on the committee were sick too. So, whatever.
Okay, well, okay. Hello, Sue, how you doing? No, I know how that works. Indeed. Okay, we're just gonna start the overview. I'll wait for you.
You don't have to wait.
Yes,
Okay, I'll just sit.
are we okay? No. I do not want
I
you,
really wanted to do something with my face.
I don't want you to float away,
Love your
darling.
face. Don't worry
So
about
I
it.
don't.
Hey,
Your face is just fine.
You're looking at my face and saying you need to do something with yours?
Neither one of you have anything to
Well,
worry
then-
about.
What are you talking about, woman? Okay,
Besides, the
this
beauty
week.
contest was over a half hour ago, so you missed it. That's it.
I have to tell you, if there was a week that I wanted to take, I would have asked for this one.
Mm.
Oh, okay. I
Luke.
understand from reading it last night.
Yeah, Luke is probably, well, you all know I have a soft spot in my heart for St. Peter.
Mhm.
He is just so human. I mean, you can see, or I can visualize St. Peter falling over his own 2 feet,
He's a bit of a goofball.
trying to, have you ever seen a St. Bernard puppy before it was completely coordinated? They look like they're running and they look like they've got 8 legs and only 2 of them are fully under control. I visualize St. Peter like that all the time. And that's why, since I'm only partially in control of my limbs most of the time, that's why he's my, when I grow up, I want to be like him. But when it comes to Luke is just the other side. He is very human. He does and says things that I could never imagine the scholarly St. Paul even having this thought cross their mind. And when you read the first couple of pages in our booklet today, in our book today, Awaiting Thee Already, you can see, first of all, he writes really, really highbrow Greek. I can't read even schoolgirl Greek anymore. It's been 10 years since I was in seminary. Why would I keep that in my mind? But he writes really, really educated Greek, which is good for somebody who considers themselves pretty well educated. But he calls this, our author calls it Zechariah, Elizabeth, Mary, and the Shepherds, the ultimate playlist. And if you can think about it, we're all of an age where we went into places in our younger days where they had jukeboxes. And you went in and you took your 5 selections, in my day for a quarter, and listened to your songs, and then everybody else played theirs as well. And you got to hear that a lot of the people in the same place had the same songs on their mind that you did. And now I've always been a fan of Saint Elizabeth. Old woman, way too old to be having children, suddenly finds out, yeah, well, guess what? You told God your plans, God laughed, and this is what you get. And the vision of Elizabeth being a mentor for Mary, who was at the opposite end of the age range, but she was very brave, because she could just as easily have been stoned to death if she was found out to be pregnant and not married. And it was her husband's prerogative, because she was betrothed. She wasn't fully his wife, but she wasn't unrelated to him either. It's why when the time came, all Joseph had to do was go to the rabbi and said, Rabbi, we consummated the marriage in private. That's it. They're married.
Hmm.
And so there would have been no penalty to Mary, because although they were technically only betrothed, not fully married, they would, the rabbi would go to the right people and say, they couldn't wait. You know how it is with these young ones. So, and everybody, and the guys would all nod, because at least some of them
They're all men, they knew.
got married exactly the same way. Because the expectation was that it would take about a year from the time that they announced their betrothal till the husband would have a place prepared for her to live. And that's really when they were married. The consummation was proof thereof. But this is how everybody expected it to work out. And so there they are. I'm starting on page 47. It's
Okay.
week
Where?
3, Luke. And then the other thing is our author, Magri, which apparently is a male name. I would never have known that his name. He wants to talk about the power of songs. Now, I imagine that we've all been around the church long enough that we have heard the saying that he who sings prays twice. It's a statement of the power of the importance of music to liturgy. I once had the experience of being in a Thanksgiving service where there was absolutely no music. Now, I know I am a child of my age, but I could not imagine going to a Thanksgiving service without hearing at least one of the old chestnuts. But this church didn't pay a musician for any day except Sunday. And the congregation apparently didn't feel capable of singing well enough to just do an a cappella verse of one of the Thanksgiving hymns, Thanksgiving songs that we all know so well. You come in on a Sunday morning, and sometimes you hear a hymn, like my favorite hymn of all time is When Morning Gilds the Skies. My heart awakening cries, and yes, you are very glad I'm not singing it. May Jesus Christ be praised. I sing that inside my own head every morning when I wake up. It's the favorite of them all. Think about a hymn that you like, that makes the liturgy seem more alive when you get to hear it sung or to sing it yourself. That's the experience that our author is trying to bring into our minds as we talk about Luke's gospel. Think about we've just come from Mary getting the message from Gabriel. And she's questioned him. She's been cringing about it. How can this be? Because I don't know a man, as it said in the King James Version that I grew up with. So he goes through all the little things that God has given him as his message. And he said, and guess what? After all these years, your relative Elizabeth is in the 6th month of her pregnancy. Now, why Mary didn't just black out at that point, I don't know. Because literally, she was way too old to be getting pregnant. She was probably at least as old as I am. In her day and age, to be 70 years old, to have no children. Yeah, she had been called all the nasty names about barren women used to get called, and still do in some cases. And so that apparently is what convinces Mary, because after that she says, I'm on board, be it to me as you have said it will be. Before that, you could feel just in her words the stiffness in her body and the uncertainty of this absolutely outlandish message. But just like any good jukebox, there's a couple older songs in there. And I think we should probably turn to page 49 and look at Zechariah. Because Zechariah is also another side of the situation. He's an old man. He's every bit as old as his wife. And if she has no kids, neither does he. And he's a priest. Not a priest who lives in Jerusalem. He's one of the Levites who lives in the local community and is scheduled to serve at certain times of the year. And he and his wife go up to Jerusalem, serve there. He does his service for whatever length of time it is, and then they go home again. And then it's really, really excruciatingly obvious that there are no children in their household. Because when they're in Jerusalem, living in the facilities there, of course, the priests bring their families with them. So, at one time.
Question. Did people in those days live longer than what we live today?
For the most part, they did not.
And so
there were plenty who lived to very advanced age. For instance, the prophet Samuel.
But I guess I just have a hard time accepting that these people were 100 years old, number one, and number two, that they were still having sex, and number three, that they could get pregnant. I mean, is that a hard thing to?
Yes, it
say?
is. It's hard. It's hard to believe. I'm sure that Elizabeth,
She had menopause already
and she was
everything.
way
She was a
past
miracle.
menopause. And the fact that she got pregnant was the instigation of God. Go ahead.
In reference to what she was asking, there is a place in the Soviet Union. They
Where?
call it Abyssinia. there are people that have actually lived to be almost 150 years old. Now, doctors have confirmed, some doctors have confirmed that if you live a life stress-free, now, like those people, they're not under the kind of stress every day we're under. You could actually live to be over 100 years old. I mean, if you live a very simple life and you don't have a lot of stress,
Exactly.
and people even in rural areas that are not
Frequently,
confronted with all this, they tend to live a lot longer and healthier than people who live in the cities.
They didn't have all the pollutants, they didn't have
Yeah.
all the chemicals in the
Right.
foods. They didn't have,
But
and it was an
I,
agrarian
and
society.
I will agree with you. I have a hard time believing they were 100 years old. But
Could there be another explanation for that? Or
there
should
are,
we just say they were 100 years old like we would be 100 years old?
no, there are other reasons. One of the things is that they say they were X number of years old. But how do we know that what they called a year was 365 days?
Well,
That our year was,
Susan, my Bible,
your Bible says,
yeah, remember that.
oh, yes,
I
Oh,
didn't mean
yes.
to say that.
No, no,
because I
that's
don't wanna
okay.
Send anyone away from the green.
no, but what happens is translations vary. People understand time in different ways. And just because, and I am perfectly comfortable saying that what I understand to be a year may not be what the people in ancient Addis Ababa.
What bothered, what I always puzzled about was if Mary is related to Elizabeth, how come there's such a gigantic age gap? Because Mary's always been portrayed as being like an older teenager, 16, 18, whatever. And I'm always,
Almost certainly no more than 14.
all right.
The beginning of the Bible, where God created this
Okay, how you doing?
thing in 7 days, the seventh day.
I'm
How-
coming
what was it
along. I
day?
know that, well,
Our theory said each
I
day
don't know
in
what-
that time.
I
was
was in
1,000 years.
urgent care. I was in the
But
emergency.
You don't know
for
what a
8
day
hours
even
and told me
was.
I have a
Exactly.
cold, But I've had.
And
lung
this
issues,
is, to
and I've
me,
had,
this is
so,
fun to talk about,
been out for 3 weeks. And,
but it's not the,
medication.
it's not the
I mean,
determinant
prednisone seemed to
of
be the best,
whether,
so,
whether I believe and you believe the same thing.
This is one of the
Because
days
the
that we have
mechanics
to
of
walk
how
from
how
one room to the other.
things work
And,
are the mechanics of how they work, whether I understand them or not.
have an appointment with Bill.
And what my understanding isn't the
I mean,
important.
Friday, I'm sorry to find out.
Stephanie needs to mute herself because she's talking at the same time.
But I can't.
Yes.
Steph, can you mute your computer, hon? I think she got it.
Right.
No, okay,
Wow.
well, she's not hearing me. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
The other thing is,
Imagine.
a big part of of what Luke is all about especially in the beginning of his gospel, is saying
You're welcome. Absolutely.
the people who are Greeks, you're not part of the Hebrew culture, you're not part of the Jewish religion, you're not part of of course you don't understand the mechanics of how this works, why this means something to the Jewish community. Because you don't know what it means to the Jewish community. You will hear me use the term culturally illiterate. That's what that means. I know for a non-Jew, I have a pretty good handle on Jewish traditions. Doesn't mean I understand what they mean. And therefore, I'm comfortable letting them go
Okay.
as they are. So I just go ahead. Hi.
UPS.
Ah, do you want someone to sign?
Let's see if we can get it. Let me just drop off. Just the name,
Susan.
Matthew or Matthew.
in the office?
Greg Matthews, he's our administrator, but he's homesick today.
Oh,
Put down Susan Clark, Clarke. It's my last name.
Good.
And anybody in the office will know who I am.
All right, but I can read it here.
Please do.
Okay, have a great one.
You too
Thank you.
now.
Have a nice holiday.
Safe travels.
Thank you.
So I can accept, different input without saying, so the fact that Mary had a skin of her teeth experience with execution, that to me is mechanics. It's not the gift from God. For Mary was Elizabeth. And then much later, Jesus, because she didn't even realize what she was getting into. And I am firmly convinced that you don't know what you're getting into until you're doing it. And until she was raising Jesus and being his mother, she had no clue what was coming down the line for her or for him or for the rest of the world. But here's Zechariah. He's in the temple doing his priestly duty. The angel Gabriel comes in and says, "Oh, and by the way, your wife's going to have a baby." And Zechariah's first thought was, "What, are you kidding me? She's way too old to have a baby." He's probably also, I know guys don't like to admit this, but he's also thinking, I'm not at all sure that I'm able to make that happen. Thank you very much. By the way, I was about to say something that might get both Sue and Pete to throw their shoes at me, so I won't do that. She said she had problems believing that these people were having sex. Okay.
I don't have it in my head.
Yeah.
What
What-
did you say?
When you were making your comments about things that are different,
Right,
you said one of the things you said, and they're still they're this age and they're still having sex.
right.
And I'm thinking, I understand the age part, but I don't understand the not having sex part. But then again, I've
They
been,
were 100 years old.
Yeah, but who knows what that means in that time and place?
Well,
Bing Crosby fathered a child in his 80s. He was almost 90. Why couldn't anybody else?
Well, then another thing too, in this chapter, it says that Zachariah over the next 9 months,
while she's pregnant.
watch the belly grow. So it does take 9 months to grow a child.
Yes. Mhm. Oh, they knew how long it took to bring a child to fruition.
But
They've been doing it for a long time.
Yeah, but it took them 9 months back then, so.
It
it
takes the
must
same
have been
amount of
100
time.
Years. I'm looking at the people in the nursing home that are 100 years old, and I'm just not imagining it, but it's okay, we can move on from that.
Oh, good. And Susan will stop
That's
making
not
her
the point of the
stop.
change.
Right, I'm
Exactly.
sorry,
It's
I
okay.
got
So
off track.
here's Zechariah being himself, doing his work. But Gabriel didn't have any trouble telling that he was not really believing the message that he was getting from
He
God.
got punished for it.
So now just think about this for a few seconds. You probably all heard me say it. Clergy love to hear their own voices.
That's a joke.
Can you imagine? Yes, even if he's listening, I'm going to say it. Can you imagine if Father Paul couldn't say a word for 9 months? I think after about the 6th week, his head would explode. Because I know it wouldn't take much longer than that for me, and I'm not even clergy. And so there he is. You're gonna, fine. Not only are you going to be the father of this child, you're going to call his name John. And I don't care that nobody in your family has ever been named John before. That's normally what happens in Jewish community is you use the name of an ancestor. Not as this gentleman suggests of the father. It's not a usual practice among Jews to have a junior. They usually name after the grandfather or for the back.
After the father.
So as our authority explains to us, as our authority, because she actually knows a whole lot more about being Jewish than I do. And you hear the voices going. God is telling me that I'm right on the edge of the Zechariah promise there, because I'm about to lose my voice. So in other words, make it count, woman. So there we are. You're going to sit around quietly until the things that have been prophesied come true. And that's exactly what happens. When they take on the 8th day after his birth, they take him to the temple to do what is customary. And John the Baptist, as he will become, poor boy, does not have any clue what's coming. And I'm not even talking past the circumcision. They say, okay, what are we going to call kid? And since dad can't talk, they go to mom. She says, call him John. And they give her a hard time. And so they say to Zechariah, okay, we know you can't talk, but you can still write. What are we supposed to call this child? And he writes down, his name is John. Not, we should call him John. His name is John. He is given a name that was prophesied for him before his conception. When God wants you to have a name, and he tells your parents beforehand, he's serious about it. And he became John the Baptizer, or as we call him, John the Baptist. And we all know that his life did not end happily, but he did exactly what God wanted of him. And even if he sang like I sing, God was happy with him because he sang the song that God put on his lips. And that is another level of blessing that kind of apparently gets left out in this book.
Now, John was the only one of the disciples that wasn't Jewish, right?
John wasn't a disciple, and he was Jewish.
Oh, he was?
Oh yeah,
Because I know all
his father, his dad, Zechariah was a priest in the temple.
Oh, okay.
So he was definitely
Because I
Jewish.
know somewhere I heard that, but I know that all the disciples were Jewish, and they were supposed to seek out the lost tribes. The tribes
yes,
that had been
all-
dispersed.
Yes,
Yeah, they
And-
call the Jewish religion the diaspora, the dispersed.
diaspora. Yes, we have. No, they were Hebrews. Of course, We call them diaspora, they call themselves Hebrews, or later Jews. So that's our first song. And I think it was a bit of a stretch because he calls it a song from silence. But it worked to its end. Now, I have to tell you that I do have a bit of difficulty with some of the things that are used as parenthetical expressions. So I won't necessarily use very many of them. We're going to jump to page 52, and we're going to get into the song of Elizabeth. You, child, will be called a prophet of the Most High. You will go before the Lord to prepare his way. You will tell his people how to be saved through the forgiveness of their sins. Because of our God's deep compassion, the dawn from heaven will break upon us to give light to those who are sitting in darkness and in the shadow of death, to guide us on the path of peace. I misrepresented that one. That actually is the song of Zechariah. He's working, he's come out of a dark, or at least quiet place, because he has been forced not to converse with people. He's been forced to only listen. And it probably was no more pleasant for him than it is for us when we're not allowed to speak. Has anybody been in a situation where I'm thinking of in a courtroom, you are required to sit quietly and only listen? And have you found that as frustrating as I do?
Any school classroom that you're in,
No.
through your education, you have to be quiet in class.
Kids I taught didn't know that. They weren't quiet.
No, that's
I
another.
had to be the big.
Church.
We had to spend a lot of time being frustrated until I got into college, and then I just didn't bother. If the professor was saying something that I thought was particularly nonsensical, I spoke up. I got asked to leave a couple of classes, but most of the time the professor wanted to argue with me.
I have to say, in my psych studies in nursing school and in other areas of that type, I learned the value of just listening, how crucial it is to just listen to people, even if what they're saying doesn't make sense. Just to give them that attention and let them talk means so much to them, and to help them get well and things like that.
One time in this country, there was a president, his name was Calvin Coolidge. He hardly ever spoke more than 2 words. And somebody asked him one time, he says, "You don't talk a lot, but why?" He says, "I prefer to listen to what people have to say. You learn more from listening to people than giving speeches."
It's true. And in healthcare, it's crucial, which is,
Yeah.
so you
I had
can't
a
help
very
a person if
unusual
you don't know what's
experience this
bothering
morning.
them.
I went to the library, to get that paper out. And I saw one of the, when I was working at that group home last year, I saw the man come in that was responsible for almost causing me to lose my job. But I said, "Listen, I don't want to bear no grudge. I went up to him and I says, hello, Brian, how are you? He hugged me and I says, take care, have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And I felt a lot better. I really did. I mean, I was angry at them one time, but I just, I just had to relate that. I mean, how, if you're willing to forgive someone, you're gonna feel a lot better after you do it.
Well, anger and hate only hurts the person who feeling the anger and the hate.
Yeah.
The other person doesn't even know what you're
And you
thinking.
make the
or feeling
people
half
around
the
you
time.
miserable too when you're like that, it doesn't pay at all.
Nothing to gain by
Yeah.
hate and anger.
That's right. You'll feel a lot better, and that's a good way of getting rid of your guilt too. It says that in the Bible also.
We're gonna move on to, on page 53, Mary, talking about the Song of Obedience. Here she is, very young woman. I told Stephanie earlier that she was probably no more than 14. And the reason that we make that assumption is that if she was old enough to have had her first period, sorry guys, it's the only way to describe it. Well, actually, I can use other terms, but they're euphemistic and you wouldn't understand. You might not know what they mean.
Menopause.
No,
Nowadays, they
menopause
have
is at the other end.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
Menopause is when you stop having your period. If she was of an age that she had had her first period, she would have been married off very quickly afterwards, because that was the practice. And if God was looking for a virgin, and obviously he was, that's the whole conversation. He had to get her before, when she was visually old enough to be considered a woman, but not physically. When he sent Gabriel to her. By the way, what about this poor guy Gabriel? He's got all these weird, strange, scary messages to deliver to these women. And he doesn't know any better than anybody else at this point, what any of this means. I mean, he knows what his message is. Do you need me to, are you going to leave?
No,
Oh, okay.
I just have to sit and stand up.
Gotcha. I had that experience quite a bit,
You just
unfortunately.
have to use the bathroom.
Okay, and we're talking. And our author,
But he opens all his scary messages telling them to don't be afraid.
first
That's
thing
the
out of
whole
his
theme
mouth
of this.
is, don't be afraid.
That's right.
Well, actually,
It's terrified.
you should be freaking afraid, okay? These are the rules that you people have set up for each other. And some of them are based on rules that God gave you, and some of them pretty much are not. And Gabriel probably understood that, although Zephaniah may well not have understood that. He probably thought all those laws came straight from God. We know, when we meet her, we know little about her, except that she is a young girl engaged to Joseph. So she's that's not very much of a starting point, but we learn quite a lot about her in very short order. First of all, she is pretty nearly fearless. She knows very well that if she is found to be pregnant, outside of wedlock, she can be stoned to death. And by the way, that's a practice that some people still use. I would not want to be the referee at that shouting match. And then we later find out about Elizabeth and all that. But it so easily could have gone the other way, because there was a clear sense that Mary had the right to tell Gabriel to take his message back where he got it from. It is not a foregone conclusion, as the story is told, that Mary would say, okay, because if it was a foregone conclusion, why would you bother telling them? If she had no choice, why would you bother telling her? Let her find out she was pregnant the way all women do, even if she hadn't engaged in the prerequisite behavior.
The men had hard choices too, because in those days, they didn't have a way to prove who was the father, things, who knows what entered their heads.
That's
at that time.
exactly why. A second indication of Mary's courage, she had the courage to accept the message from God. And she had the courage to believe that God would take care of her, because she couldn't count on Joseph. I mean, she may have known him around the town, but they had no real relationship yet. She couldn't say, yeah, okay, you say your name is Gabriel. I think I'm confident that my betrothed Joseph will have my back on this. So go ahead, let it proceed as God has said it will. No, she had to say, I'm in for a penny, in for a pound, and if God wants this to happen, then God will make it happen, and God will keep me safe as it happens. And I'm sorry, that's, how many 14-year-olds do you know right now who would be able to make that kind of a declaration of faith and belief and confidence in God?
There is none.
That's it.
A different
I know
time.
at 14, I wouldn't have been able to. She's a woman of very considerable gravitas, even though she's not yet pregnant. And then let's compare that with Zechariah. How can I be sure of this? My wife and I are very old. Mary, how will this happen? Since I haven't had, this is nowhere near what Mary would have said. Haven't had sexual relations with a man. She probably didn't even know the word sexual, let alone relations. Mary got the proof that the message was true by reference to her relative, Elizabeth, and they're careful to point out in everything that I've ever read, relative, I mean, in some Christian communities, they say cousin. In King James Version, I think it's kinswoman, female relative. Someone who is related to you, who you may not know, who you who you may not know how they are related to you. Indeed, because of the tribal structure of Israel compared to the tribal structure of other cultures that exist now, it's possible that what they are called relatives to each other, and there is no what we would call DNA between them. Because what constitutes the tribe is, in Israel, for instance, all the offspring of the 12 sons of Jacob, of Israel. Wasn't it convenient that God changed his name to Israel in the middle of the whole thing? So now the brothers are the heads of the 12 tribes. Real cute. Makes it semantically easier for us because we don't understand their cultural structure, being from non-tribal. Although I say this, and then might be someone here who's Native American, and they do have a tribal structure. And so they're going through this. Mary and Gabriel, and finally she gets to the place where, okay, just as you said is going to happen, it clicks for her, and in the 46th to the 55th verse of the first chapter of Luke, with all my heart, I glorify the Lord. In the depths of who I am, I rejoice in God, my Savior. He who looked with favor on the lowly status of his servant. Look, from now on, everyone will consider me highly favored, because the Mighty One has done great things for me. Holy is his name. He shows mercy to everyone, from one generation to the next, who honors him as God. He has shown strength with his arm. He has scattered those with arrogant thoughts and proud inclinations. He has pulled the powerful down from their thrones and lifted up the lowly. By the way, we're on the top of page 57. He has filled the hungry with good things and sent the rich away empty-handed. He has come to the aid of his servant Israel, remembering his mercy, just as he promised our ancestors, to Abraham and to Abraham's descendants forever and ever. We know this under various names. It's frequently called the Psalm of Mary, but for those of us who know the Latin names, it's the Magnificat. In the Episcopal Church of my childhood, this was the only writing in the entire prayer book that was spoken in the voice of a woman. And as a child growing up in the 60s, this became an incredibly important piece of scripture for me. You just can't understand Mary about how she was blessed by God with the partially dangerous blessing of Jesus. And yet, you can't understand Christmas without understanding Jesus as being an unadulterated blessing of humanity. You spend your time thinking about this little girl barely out of what the aged people would call leading strings, and pregnant with the Son of God, and trembling in fear as she returns to Bethlehem to confront her betrothed, now visibly with child. She left Bethlehem right after the Annunciation, and she still looked like a 14-year-old girl who would probably be married in about a year. And she comes home about 3 months later when it's time for her kinswoman to give birth, because women who had not given birth from those days to the time of my mom's mother were not allowed to be in the house when someone was in labor. Girl children were not supposed to know what childbirth was like until they underwent it themselves. And it probably was a blessing, a mitzvah for them, because to go through that experience in the presence of someone else would probably make it much, much more difficult when it came time for you to give birth, because there was no real process to ameliorate the pain. The people who delivered the babies were usually, we would in a certain time in our history would have called them midwives, but that implies at least some level of training. And what passed for training for a midwife in Mary's day was something else altogether. So there we have Mary and the second song. And now we're going to talk about the angels we have heard on high, sweetly singing through this night, and the mountains in reply, echoing the brave delight. As if it wasn't enough to have had to go and tell Zechariah and Elizabeth and Mary, Gabriel and the heavenly host get to go tell the shepherds, and through the shepherds, everybody else on earth, that we're ready. We've got a Messiah. We've got the Son of God born over there in Bethlehem, and I'm going to send you to a stable to see where the baby lays.
Excuse me, I see something in here. It said, like when it said Babylonians, Persians, and the Greeks. Sadducees, who are they?
They're a little bit later in the historical chain, and they would have.
I never heard of them. That's why.
They're just not with that name. They were the second Babylonian captivity.
Oh, I see.
They were still centered in Babylon, but it was a new group of
Oh, right.
a new faction from that same area, and they yes,
Thank you.
that area got overrun pretty frequently because there were no real natural barriers to keep enemies out. I mean, in our country, we're fortunate we've got two big fat oceans that keep people from Europe and Asia coming to us. Unfortunately, that area is pretty much flat. And then we are out there with the shepherds. And this is the time where people who are non-believers will make a big hoop-de-doo about this, because in most places in the Roman province of Palestine, which is what this whole area was in those days, in December, it's too blessed cold to be sleeping outdoors, watching your sheep. And lots of people use that as a suggestion that, of course, Jesus wasn't born in December. Again, to me, mechanics. Doesn't matter when. We know where, we know that, and just what day it was isn't the most important thing on the roster. And if in the early church, which is a statement that has been made, and some scholars subscribe to it, the date was moved to another already holy day because it was a way to keep Christians from being persecuted, because they were celebrating on that sacred day also. Mechanics, it doesn't, to me, it means absolutely nothing. However, I got thundered on that by several different versions of Baptists when I was in seminary. I said, so what you're telling me is that that the date December 25th is so important that it was recorded someplace when this little tadpole, who would become, but was not yet, a very important person in the history of the world, somebody took this son of a 14-year-old girl and her carpenter husband and wrote it down someplace and kept it under such control that after he died, somebody could find the notation of the date of his actual birth and make a big macha out of it. And we know that didn't happen. We know it didn't happen to most of what he was doing while he was alive. So why would we think that when he was 33 years before that, somebody took notice of his birth? Go ahead.
That's why you have BC and AD. Right, BC before Christ, and AD means
I don't know the year of the Lord.
Yeah.
Yes,
because
it's one of, but if you are Jewish, you know that there's another calendar that's like 5,000 years plus.
well, they have Rosh Hashanah. That's supposed to be the new year. And then
That's the
10 days later, there's Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement.
atonement,
Yeah,
yes.
but they don't,
But-
their calendar is entirely different. It's the year almost 6,000 something. They don't count BC and AD.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm
It's
just saying, but
nonstop.
For
but
us.
what was interesting, if you look at the history, the years before Christ were born were all going down in descending order.
That,
And then if,
that was done in the Middle Ages. Had nothing to do with, until that time, we were not, most of us were not really sophisticated enough to be thinking about things in the BC, what we now, most people, my training tells me, because my training is in history. Did I get into the right field or what? It's, for me, it's before the Common Era. So for me, it's BCE and CE. The Common Era being the Christian calendar, but before the Christian calendar is what you're talking about. And that, as I said, that was not, they didn't even start talking about that until Middle Ages, and the lowly monk who assigned the date to Jesus' birth got it wrong, because there were records in the Roman what's the word for their administration that will tell you, for instance, when Herod was king and other dates match up in such a way that Jesus was born in 4 BC. And you can't be born before Christ if you're Christ. I mean, that's like trying to confuse me. Actually, did for a while, but you know, I had some very interesting people who taught me the things that I needed to know. Did any of you get to read the piece about the cellist of Sarajevo?
no.
It was deeply moving to me, but I cannot possibly read it aloud. Not because my voice is going, but because after about 3 paragraphs, you'll discover that when Susan cries, it's always ugly. I always have an ugly cry. So if you want to read through that,
Did you want someone to read it?
if somebody feels that they can do it, yes, please go ahead.
I didn't hear what you said.
She said, do you want somebody to read it?
Oh, okay.
And I said, yes, if you want to, please.
You want me to read it?
Yes, please.
All right, The Cellist of Sarajevo. The 2008 novel of The Cellist of Sarajevo is a fictionalized retelling of the horrors of the Bosnian War in the early 1990s, in which the capital of Sarajevo underwent the longest siege of a capital city in modern warfare. It lasted from 1992 to 1996, during which time nearly 14,000 people were killed and over 100,000 homes and buildings were damaged or destroyed. In the book, one of those buildings was a bakery, which was bombed by mortar shells in 1992, killing 22 people waiting in line for bread. In the immediate aftermath of the attack, rescue personnel and neighbors rushed to the scene to help the victims, including a 35-year-old gentleman named Vedran Smilovic. Smilovic was not a doctor, a politician, or soldier. By many standards, he was essentially powerless to address the persistent rain of mortar shells and random sniper fire that deluged his beloved city on the daily basis. Smilovic was a musician and accomplished cellist with the Sarajevo Philharmonic Orchestra. In the wake of the bombing in his nearby bakery, Smilovic did the one thing he knew how to do well. He took his cello to the very site where those 22-year innocent victims were killed, and he began playing the hauntingly melancholy Adagio in G minor by Tommaso Albinoni. For 22 straight days, one for each of the victims, the cellist played the same song in various places around Sarajevo where violence and destruction had consumed the city. He often played right in the midst of rubble, or at funerals of the deceased, or even in open courtyards in the dead sun of sniper rifles, as bombs and bullets continued to wreak havoc around him. His music brought comfort to the grieving and a therapeutic salve to a war-weary country. He provided a real-time soundtrack to the agonies of the suffering, expressing both latent and blatant pain in a way only music can. But more than that, his public performances embodied a bold confrontation to the powers at large, proclaiming that no act of violence and no evil deed could thwart the spirit of a people determined to live in freedom.
Thank
Perhaps,
you. That's the end of the story.
oh, just one thing,
Mhm.
for those who might not know, Sarajevo is where World War I actually began.
Where the assassination
There was a
of the
terrorist
Archduke
who
took place, yes.
he assassinated the Archduke of Austria-Hungary, who was visiting, and that's how actually how World War I started. August 1914.
Be a long time before I get a plane ticket to Sarajevo, I'll tell you. And I was about halfway through that, and I had to stop. I just was not gonna last much longer with that. And then I went back and read the end of it, because halfway through, I assumed that he was shot while playing. And that was gonna be it for Susan. Fortunately, it didn't work that way. But I'm not even sure, based on what is said, that our author got the significance of bringing up the music after what he had said earlier about the songs, Silence and Luke and all that, and the music does that to me anyway. If I'd had the chance to be a musician, I would have been a very happy camper. I just don't have that ability. And then we get to the conclusion. Perhaps this is why Luke's version of the Christmas story was written, to provide songs that strengthen the soul in the midst of suffering. This is the holy task to which God calls the church. For like the cellist, we have no rightful claim to political power or military might. The church is neither politician nor soldier. And history has shown tragic consequences whenever the church has tried to assume either role. Our discipleship demands that our tactics to address evil must be born of a separate standard and a different ethic. But we become, lest we become the very evil we strive to overcome. The cellist Sarajevo might have reminded us that the church is called to minister in a melodic defiance. I'm sorry, I'm not going any further with that. That's just way too far off in the weeds. At least for me. Do you disagree? Are you finding?
I didn't know why they put that in the book. Like it
Yeah,
didn't-
I don't even know
it
why
didn't
it
match
should have
with
been there.
whatever else was
Yeah.
in the reading. I didn't understand.
It's interesting, but why
I
was it
think
there?
I think the author just had that story and was like, I gotta get to put this in.
I gotta use
I don't know. It didn't seem to go with the rest of it. But whatever.
Seemed like something the
got
author
the
just
general
felt like
message.
talking about.
Yes. I think possibly just putting the story in was all that needed to be done from that. So now Susan's going to stop talking. It won't be for 9 months, but she's going to stop talking. And we're going to look at some of the reflection questions. Does anybody remember Schoolhouse Rock? These are reflection questions, conjunction, junction, all those things. What do you experience when you hear your favorite, most moving piece of music? How is that sensation different from that which comes from any other sensory experience?
I listen to Christian music and it's very soothing compared to other sensory experiences that I have.
And I'm primarily a country music fan nowadays. So it's not necessarily that, but it has its moments.
When I hear my favorite piece or a really nice piece, I get goosebumps.
Okay, goosebumps definitely are part of the recognition of being moved by music. At least it is for me.
I'm very moved by music. I like country music too, and I like the words to the song. And I feel guilty because I listen to the highway instead of religious music when I'm moving back and forth to Pennsylvania. But you know, a lot of country music has God things in it too. Not just- not
A lot
just-
of country music has religious themes in it,
Yeah.
as a lot of country music practitioners and fans
They're very religious
Are-
in the South. Yeah.
are thinking of those things.
But I've often thought that if I listened to spiritual music, I would be more spiritual. I've often thought of that, but I choose to listen to country music. And every once in a while, with a song that's,
Has this overtone. I'll tell you what, 2 years ago, when we were putting together my mom's memorial service, my youngest niece is a very, very talented singer. And my mom and I, both country music fans. And we were talking about, and I said to my brother and sister-in-law and niece, do we have the ability to get equipment here so that we can play music? Because she was going into the memorial garden, so that that we can sing something graveside. And my brother said, we'd have to make some, we'd have to question a couple of people about different things, but we probably can. I wanted to sing, Will the Circle Be Unbroken?
Oh, yeah, I got that song.
And my niece, who knows some country music, but she's not what you would call a fan. She said, who recorded it? And my brother said, well, the first people who recorded it, and I said, oh God, were the Carters. June Carter's mom,
Mother
aunt,
Maybelle
and uncle. The
and
three of them,
Carter.
yes. And
AP Carter, Mother Maybelle.
and the sister. And she gets out her phone and she can't find it. And she said, who else? And I said, everybody. And she said, so if I just put the name in, I said, yeah. And she said, and then I said, I particularly like the Johnny Cash version because I just particularly like Johnny Cash.
Everybody's recorded that.
and
Who's
she's-
anybody in
and she-
country music?
And she looked and she said, I've got 37 responses. When you said everybody, you weren't kidding. And I said, and count on it, there's that many more that aren't on your list. Long and short, we did eventually. My brother was able to borrow a karaoke machine from one of his friends. And we brought it down and sang that at her graveside. And
When
what time?
I think that, Imagine song. the
Yes,
song- The Imagine
Beatles-
song.
The
is
Beatles
a
song
beau-
Imagine.
Is a beautiful song
Mhm.
for, funerals or memorial.
Exactly.
Oh,
services.
John Lennon's song,
Yes,
Imagine.
okay.
No, this is
Oh.
the song, imagine when you see the Lord, when you die and go to heaven,
Never
what
heard
it will be like. Oh, it's a beautiful song.
That one I'm not familiar with.
No, when I hear that
I
title,
was-
I think
I
of John
like-
Lennon's song. Yeah. Which is a good, thoughts in that song. is
It's a
very
good reference. I'm sorry.
Okay, I love old music, I love country western. But the way I read that question, the music that moves me in a very peculiar way, and you're gonna think I'm nuts, and I'm sorry, but it's Beethoven. You know, because he
Oh.
was stone cold deaf.
When he
Okay?
wrote some of that stuff and
And,
it's just,
I was privileged to see Luciano Pavarotti sing 2 or 3 times. The reason why it moves me, because I could just, I know that these voices don't come from humanity. That talent comes from someplace other than being a good musical student. These people, they created music that's lasted 300 and 400 years. Like little children, we go, da, 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 they didn't know what that is. So when I hear it, I feel small, I feel insignificant, and I'm grateful that I have ears.
that's it.
Anyway, I just want to throw that out.
Yeah, that's,
Oh, yeah. But did you know that Beethoven, one time, he composed a symphony just by starting with 3 notes?
I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I
somebody
know what they
challenged him
were.
to do it.
No, no,
Yes,
no,
yeah.
When the Ninth Symphony, I'm quite certain it was, he was deaf as could be, so he performed it, and he didn't hear any applause from the audience. And one of the musicians come up and turned it around, and the people were going nutty. But he did this when most people have handicaps that they lay on the couch for their whole life and not be part. This guy went deaf when he was a young, relatively young man. And it's just to me, if that's not inspired by the good Lord, I just don't know what is.
Yeah, well, he was in Vienna, staying at his brother's house, and this was when when Napoleon invaded, and there was all this cannon fire going on, and he just like had, I don't know, I think he had a pillow over his head. He was writing music, but he was a genius. He was,
But he was inspired by God.
yes, yes.
We all know what we can do, but to do it at the level that these guys did it it's beyond my comprehension.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it was a gift. It was a
Oh.
God-given gift.
Well, I want to thank everybody for being here today. It's my style, as you can see, is significantly different from Father Paul's. And I thank you for allowing me to exercise that skill.
Thank you for doing it.
And I want to, we're not going to actually have time to talk about this, but it's another reflection question. What is your favorite Christmas song? What does this song selection suggest about your faith, your personality, and your life in general? Leave that as, let's make that a question for reflection.
Silent Night.
That could take up the
Mine
whole.
too, right, Silent Night. Mhm.
Reindeer.
I would suspect that you're right.
I was thinking chestnuts roasting on an open fire.
Silent
be
Night,
toasty.
Tannenbaum.
Away in a manger.
Away in a manger.
Mary, did you know?
Oh, isn't that great?
Oh,
I love
That just blows me away every time.
every time.
I love Oh Holy Night, but I like certain performance of it, like Celine Dion. If you
Hers is
Google
like the
to
best.
her live performance of that song, that really moves me. You know, I know everybody's recorded it, but her personal performance of that is, it's just
There's
brings
a-
tears. You know.
My favorite is Hark the Herald Angels. Okay, and now since you already know that I'm a historian, I'm going to prove it to you. My favorite Christmas hymn is What Child Is This?
Mhm.
And in our hymnal, it's set to a tune that was written in the 1400s. So I also know the words that go to the secular song that we usually have in it. And I'm going to wish you a wonderful day. And we'll close with the prayer that they offer us. Oh God,
does anybody want water?
Okay.
Do you want some water? Susan?
no, I have.
Everybody? Richard?
We're gonna say it together.
Yeah, let's do that. It's on page 63. Oh God, who deserves our worship.
Thank you for giving us the gift of music. It open our hearts and minds to a fresh inbreaking of the Spirit of Christ, that we may be for the world the melody and lyrics of your love incarnate. Amen.
Amen.
Wow.
To mangle English and Spanish and say hasta la vista.
Ole.
If you guys want to leave, but if anyone wants to hear this song, it says,
Is this
I
the
can only
Imagine song?
imagine what it will be
Absolutely, play it.
like when I walk by your side. I can only imagine what my eyes would see when your face is before me. I can only imagine. Surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus, or in awe of you be still? Will I stand in your presence, or to my knees will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak at all? I can only imagine. When that day comes and I find myself standing in the sun, I can only imagine when all I will do is forever worship you. Good
And if
idea.
anybody loves bluegrass gospel like I do, Google Daly and Vincent. They are the best, their harmonies and everything. Rhonda Vincent's brother and his partner.
And the answer is no, she can't.
Okay, I was gonna come over there.
Okay.
I had that CD. I listened to it all the time. I can imagine. I can only imagine. Yeah,
So
beautiful.
she needs to make a bereavement call. Ricky needs to make a bereavement call, so she can.
Have a good week.
Yes, and I will be very happy.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
No, he's at work. He'll be here, he'll be home later. Here.
God willing, I'll see you Sunday.
Yes, ma'am. Come tomorrow for the tree lighting.
Saturday they have it on.
Ricky, come tomorrow for the tree lighting.
This was tree lighting.
Okay.
We hear the reading
On Saturday. 2 o'clock.
Every day, weekdays from at 4 o'clock.
Okay, so, ouch. Oh, you're welcome.
Bye, Susan.
Bye-bye. Thank you for hosting, my dear.
You're welcome. I got most of what all you were talking about. I don't have a book, so I'm clueless, but I try to follow along.
Okay,
There was Carol, Jerry Ann, Dottie, and I online, so that I know of. I don't know if anybody was on YouTube. I didn't go on to find out. So you got at least 4 people, maybe more.
okay, and we had, I think, 10 here.
Well, Ward Bond.
About 7.
Well, he died in 1960.
Okay, 9 here and 4 on YouTube,
More than I know of, yeah, there might, 4 on Zoom. And I don't know who was on YouTube. I did get a message from 1 or 2 people that said they were sorry they couldn't go on today.
I know that happens.
Yeah, it does. Thank you. Did a good job.
Oh, I'm glad you got something worthwhile from it.
Right.
Good.
I wanted, like.
Very good.